Penn State football has been pursuing players and situations that fit in the class of 2026. We said things weren't over in June, and they're picking up again. Penn State football gets another player in the class of 2026. Sean Fitz, recruiting reporter, here to discuss who is now a Nittany Lion. So Fitz, welcome to the show. Who are we talking about today?
Hey, thanks. Would love to be these breaking news videos, by the way. They're just, they're good. They're a nice little treat. Sometimes you don't see them coming. This one, you probably could see it coming if you followed it. Blue White Illustrated, Penn State on the board with another commitment in the class of 2026. This one, Tavian Branch from Riverside High School in Northeast PA. This is a guy that decommitted from Rutgers last week. Penn State, he's been on Penn State's radar for a long, long time. I think it's a really interesting story. We'll get to that in a second. But if you look at the ratings, he's a high 3-star at Rivals, an 89, an 88 at 24/7, a 77 at ESPN. ESPN's kind of different, obviously. But number 35 defensive lineman, nationally number 12 player in Pennsylvania per Rivals. The industry has him a little bit lower, 61 D-line, 15 in Pennsylvania. Another big body in the class of 2026 for Penn State, a third defensive tackle to go with Alex Haskell and Isaac Chikwara from Delaware. Really localized class here, 2 from Pennsylvania, one from Delaware in this class of defensive tackles. Penn State set out to add another one after the summer. A couple guys ended up going elsewhere, but Branch has always been on the radar. Committed to Rutgers after an early official visit, also officially visited Oklahoma and Oklahoma State in one of the more random Northeast PA recruitments that I can remember, but backed off of that Rutgers pledge last week, and now he finds himself in Penn State's class of 2026.
Now, I apologize because what you're going to see here from the highlights, the intro has him listed as an offensive lineman, but I do think that leads into the conversation about his journey to Penn State, where when we first met Tavian Branch a couple years ago, he was a 6'3", 300-pound interior offensive line commit. So how did that fit into the narrative and the storyline of where he started and where he is now with the Nittany Lions?
Well, when we first met him, about 315 pounds at that point. So he has dropped some weight over the last year plus, which I think is kind of indicative of his story. You look at the summer that he had before his junior season, and he was at Penn State's camp pretty regularly. I believe 3 appearances, working with Phil Troutwine, not just in a big camp setting, but also came to some of the team camps as an individual and worked with Penn State. There was a couple of guys that have done that. Charlie Thom, who ended up going to Notre Dame, was one that did that this offseason, but really showed the work ethic, showed the dedication to getting there. And Penn State originally recruited him as an interior offensive lineman, center guard, and he plays both ways and dominates the competition up where he dominates it in Northeast PA. But you're looking at a guy that really put in the work to get on the radar of Penn State specifically, but other schools that offered. We mentioned Oklahoma State earlier, Rutgers, Syracuse was also in there. Pitt, South Carolina, Notre Dame ended up offering. Florida ended up being at the end kind of the other school that was in the mix, even though when he decommitted from Rutgers, it was like, okay, this one makes a lot of sense for Penn State. I'm not necessarily saying that he decommitted to go to Penn State, but he did open it back up, and I was on the Nittany Lions. Deion Barnes was in there. James Franklin was talking to him, and this is a Pennsylvania kid, so Penn State has since prioritized him. So, yeah, I just think that story is important because you look at his recruitment as a whole, and anytime you come back to camp that many times with an emphasis on either earning an offer or working with a potential future position coach, I think that's sort of stuff that matters. You know, you look at the positives of this recruitment and you say, this is a kid that went out and earned his offer. We thought maybe last fall he would jump on a Penn State offer. Did not happen. He actually never made it for a Penn State official visit prior to this weekend. So he was scheduled for one in June, never got around to it, and committed to Rutgers. We've seen regional guys that were maybe not at the top of the board, but, pretty good players. Elias Koch from Harrisburg. I just blanked on the defensive end. YD Collier from Philly, who is actually at Rutgers now. He's signed and joined Rutgers now, and he's a really, really good prospect. Those type of players found themselves in, I would say, Rutgers' wheelhouse, because we've talked about this on the show before, is maybe not going to command as much from Penn State as they would from Rutgers based on the priority. And I think Branch was one of those guys, and he found himself there in June. Felt pretty good about the commitment at the time, but it's only been 2 months, and now all of a sudden he's back committed to a different team, committed to his home state team.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point of guys that are squarely in Penn State's radar might be at the top of Rutgers' radar, and they're willing to pursue those guys aggressively. And we've talked endlessly about Penn State's NIL and their decision making process and all those things. So we don't need to get into those here talking about Tavian Branch.
I mean, we can talk about Rutgers is a really good scouting team. Like they
Yeah.
don't get all the guys because of where they're at in the college football hierarchy and in the regional hierarchy. Should not have tried to say that word twice in 5 seconds. That was a mistake by me. But a guy like Collier, who again is on the roster at Rutgers right now, is a guy that Penn State would have circled back around to because everything that he presents as a prospect. And Penn State, of course, probably could still use another edge in this class if they wanted to go out in that room. So Branch is a guy that Rutgers prioritized. Penn State maybe had a little bit lower on the list, and all of a sudden things change, numbers change, priorities change, and then all of a sudden he's in Penn State's class. So I think it is worth mentioning, because we've talked about it several times during this cycle, that the money dynamic does have a difference in different ways. It's not just highest bidder for the best prospect. It is dealing with guys punching up at you, Rutgers, Syracuse, in Boston College, all these schools punching up at Penn State, and it changes things for a lot of different tiers of recruitment. So I think that's probably a really interesting subplot in the class of 2026, mostly with how that has all played out.
And there's a commonality between some of these guys that you just mentioned that require us to go to the film and talk about what Tavian Branch brings to the table. We'll get to that in just one moment. But first, we got to get to our sponsor today, AJ Freedom Financial. In football and in finance, having a strong game plan makes all the difference. AJ Freedom Financial helps individuals build personalized financial strategies that align with their goals, timelines, and risk tolerance. From investment guidance and retirement planning to 401k rollovers, HSA assistance, and legacy and wealth strategies, AJ Freedom Financial offers thoughtful, one-on-one support backed by industry experience and a commitment to transparency. Whether you're starting to invest, planning for retirement, or you simply want a second look at your financial approach, AJ Freedom Financial is here to help you make informed, confident decisions. Schedule a no-obligation consultation today at www.ajffi.com. Call 866-383-6899 or email info@ajffi.com. Again, that's ajffi.com. Call 866-383-6899 or email info@ajffi.com. AJ Freedom Financial, helping Nittany Lions fans plan for what's next. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Gradient Securities, LLC. Arden Hills, Minnesota, 866-991-1539. Member FINRA, SIPC. Gradient Securities, LLC, and SEC Registered Investment Advisor offers investment advisory services under the DBA of Gradient Wealth Management. Gradient Securities, LLC, and its advisors do not render tax, legal, or accounting services. Insurance products and services offered through AJ Freedom Financial. AJ Freedom Financial and Freedom Financial Insurance, LLC are not affiliated with Gradient Securities, LLC. Thank you to AJ Freedom Financial for sponsoring our committed video series. Check them out. And also thank you to the very attractive bald actor in that commercial. He did a great job. We'll get to your thought here in a second after you unmute. I want to get to some of the things from Tavian Branch. Now, at least this happening in the middle of the season, these always get a little bit loose for me because, we're trying to get new film. So what you're seeing here on film is 2024 highlights. Played already in 2025 and playing on the defensive line. There's a lot of different moving parts with this. So I just want to say, first off, like watching the offensive line highlights, you can see the explosiveness, the athleticism. You can see the power in his frame. I think these highlights are better than what I've seen so far from 2025. And what this leads us to generally, Fitz, is Tavian Branch is a very big ball of clay. This is a very raw prospect at both positions, but his highlights pop. Like, this is a guy, and this is why, if you're talking about a priority for Rutgers, getting a big body with all the natural athleticism, the bend, the pad level, his strike rate of where he's striking his opponents, it is right where you want it to be. He's got that really great back bend and everything you want in terms of posture. All these things from an athletic perspective, I think look good. And he's got some good testing numbers, which I might come to you in a second. But generally, we're talking about what he is. Rutgers might be aiming for a guy that has Penn State level ability, but when you turn on the full game film, maybe you don't see some of the details and attention to fundamentals at either position. Also considering that he plays every play, offense and defense, and watching some of his film this year, left tackle, guard, right guard. He plays a lot of different positions for Riverside. So from that perspective of the athlete Penn State is getting here, I just was curious what your assessment of Tavian Branch is.
Yeah, as we said, he's a man amongst boys among his competition. As you can see, he plays the entire offensive line for Riverside, so that is a good sign there. But Branch in week 2 last week against Hanover, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, a forced fumble recovery. He's much better than his competition. He's much bigger than his competition. It happens, but he does kind of destroy his competition, which is also what you want to see when you are a man amongst boys there. So I think that is certainly a positive. And as you mentioned, plays every play, both sides of the ball, pretty much.
Yeah.
That is a big difference when you are a 300-pound body. It's hard to do that, and he does that at a high level up there. So yeah, I think that it's going to be one of those ones where you got to look at the bend, you got to look at the how does his length show up in the tape, and it's good length. I don't think it's elite, but it's good length for an interior prospect. But you sort of have to go back to the testing numbers. You got to go back to what we've seen at camp, because it's probably a little bit more indicative of how he's going to be able to move when everybody is 6'3.5", 300 pounds. That is the big difference there. As I said, solid length, good testing numbers. I think the most impressive thing that I saw from a testing standpoint, good short area quickness in the shuttle and good explosion in the broad jump. So I think he had what we had on record in 8.9 broad jump, which is pretty good at that size. And again, he's going to continue to grow, continue to get more athletic. Strong kid to begin with, 300 some pound bencher. So he's got a lot of the boxes checked that you would like. And again, I think it's going to take some time for him to assimilate to the college game, to catch up with the speed of the college game. But you take big bodies right now, and you hope that you can mold them, and you hope that they can take that next step. And for a guy that's played offense, for a guy that's played defense, you've got a pretty good understanding of how things work up there. Yeah, that can all work its way out. So in terms of what Penn State has in the class so far, you've got Alex Haskell, who plays at the highest level in Pennsylvania. St. Joe's Prep plays a national schedule in addition to winning the 6A title pretty much every year. They are 0-2 to start, but this is a guy that's seen different things. He's seen live bullets fly a little bit different than Tavian Branch has, so it's probably going to take Branch a little bit more time. Yeah. Isaac Chikwara, again, plays in Delaware, so that you kind of got the same idea there. But we've seen some really good players come out of those types of situations. It's do they have the athleticism? Do they have the size to hold up? And do they have the eventual strength to play at that fast level, play strong at that fast level? So I think that's what you're looking at with Penn State's class of 2026 on the interior of the defensive line.
Yeah, and I think those guys, as you mentioned, they play at that level of competition, and also in their game, I think they have, for a high school player, good awareness of what they're doing, their technique. So if we're banking timelines for young defensive players, a defensive tackle is always going to be a longer timeline than maybe a corner. I do think Branch would be the third on that list of when would you expect to see him play at Penn State. Some of the things that making sure he's aware of what his assignment is, and just the play in general. Some of the things, keeping his head up on defense and making sure he's got his eyes on the ball. There's some things that, again, working through some of the tape early in the season, maybe knocking the rust off from the offseason. Want to make sure we get into the full game breakdown, and we'll have that, T-Frank's Film Room, and of course all of our other insights. Fitz's going to have his insight over at bluewhiteillustrated.com. So appreciate you being here. I know it's a busy time of the year. We got to get people their candy, though, their excitement, their hype, because Penn State got another player in the class of 2026. So just one final thought if you got for me. If not, we'll get out of here.
I've got people love the historical Penn State comparisons. James Terry from the early part of last decade was an offensive lineman, defensive lineman, kind of came out of nowhere, played in Delaware, similar competition to what we see from these guys, and eventually was a solid player for Penn State. Played, I think he was probably the exact same size, about 6'3", 305 or so. But a guy that can go in and be more athletic than you think he was going to be, and then take up space and occupy blockers. I think that's one that I don't have many of these guys that I look at and say, this guy kind of reminds me of him. But James Terry is one that kind of is not obvious to me, but it was one that really popped in my head pretty quickly, quicker than usual, I'll say.
I like it, and I generally I think your comparisons are pretty spot on. So good one to get out of here on. If you want to get more of that, bluewhiteillustrated.com, as we mentioned. And of course, if you're watching this, like the video, hype the video, give us a thumbs up, give us a high five, give us a hug, all the things that YouTube is doing now to help us spread the word about Penn State football and their latest commit, Tavian Branch, in the class of 2026. I'm Thomas Reincar, Sean Fitz. We'll be back next time news breaks with the Nittany Lions.